You're listening to the See the Unseen podcast, where our number one focus is creating a little visibility for people who deserve a whole lot of spotlight. I'm your host, Melissa Dorjob, and I'm here to share some amazing stories that can transform and inspire lives. So get ready to take those blinders off and see the unseen. Welcome to the podcast. Today I have U.S. Representative Dan Meuser on my podcast. So welcome, Congressman. I'm so happy to have you on.
Melissa, it is absolutely my pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me on.
I'm not going to lie. I feel a little strange calling you Congressman, but you've earned it. So, but we kind of go a little bit back. I want to talk first about your family. Tell me a little bit about your family. I've got a picture of you here.
Well, thank you. My family is certainly my pride and joy. And by the way, do not need to call me Congressman. I'm Dan.
Okay.
Just like I was in the private sector, and just like who I am to all of my constituents. So, we use the titles in committee meetings and things of that nature, but certainly no need here. Like you, I mean, my family's really been my pride and joy. I've been happily married for, let me just think for a second, 34 years to my wife, Shelley. We have 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. It's kind of amazing. They're amazing kids. Fortunately, I got one graduating med school and one graduating law school on the same weekend this May. And my son just finished up at Bucknell. He had a great time there. He did a little bit of studying. No, I think I'm kidding, but he played football, and his plan is to go off to the Navy, go to officer candidate school. So that's what his plan is. So, family honestly just couldn't be better.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Wow. Your kids are pretty successful. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right?
I appreciate that. It's all them. They just, and their mother, of course, they do their thing. They're something.
That's awesome. So the reason I wanted you on the podcast, this is the See the Unseen podcast, where I like to bring a little visibility to people who deserve the whole spotlight. And I think one of the things is, how I share my story about how I grew up and my career path, and starting, from really answering the phones, working for the CEO, and learning the business over many, many years, 30 plus years in the complex wheelchair industry. And that's really where we kind of connected. I know that you started, your dad started the company, right? Pride Mobility, Quantum. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I'm going to throw up a picture here. I think that's you with Scott, your brother.
That's a little ways back. Actually, it was a joint thing between my brother Scott and my father. I joined about a year later, or close to a year later, and the company was just getting going. It was based in Pittston, Pennsylvania. My father was a New York City police officer. He had gotten into the home medical equipment business, and then a little company by the name of Pride Lumber and Furniture wound up on my brother's desk, who was working at a mergers and acquisitions company right after he finished up graduated from Wharton. So he was pretty astute and driven and skilled, frankly, and smart business person. And they put together a deal with this little company that was, one of their products was manufacturing seat lift chairs. And by the time I got there, they started getting going a little bit. Several hundred or maybe 1,000 lift chairs a month. And we started growing from there. That was I joined in 1988. And then from there, we got into scooters. We had a lot of trial and error. Heck, we had a lot of trial and error in getting our lift chairs right. And then when we started developing the scooters and making more of a name for ourselves on a nationwide basis, scooters were losing their reimbursement. You know all about that, as did seat lift chairs. But frankly, my brother Scott has always had great vision and was always able to see around corners in business and see what was next, to even know what customers wanted before customers were even demanding it. when the reimbursement ended in 1990, he said, okay, let's make luxury lift chairs. Let's make luxury scooters. Let's put lots of colors on them. Let's make these things lifestyle products as opposed to medical necessity products. And it worked. I mean, next thing you know, we've got red, green, blue, gold scooters and these luxury lift chairs that were being sold for retail and home medical equipment dealers like yourself, although you were probably still in college at the time, getting ready
High
to
school.
high school, sorry, getting ready to prepare yourself to our wonderful industry of the home medical equipment industry. And by the way, it really was, right? I mean, what a close-knit, great industry. We had, there was competition, but boy, oh boy, we had such alliances, such friendships. We were truly partners with our customers, with your companies out in Missouri and elsewhere, Arizona, New Mexico, everywhere that you helped build companies into just great companies. I mean, you really did. I mean, you were really one of the best, Melissa, just understanding all the nuances of the business. And that's what you had to do. I mean, it was just like anything, right? You had to get good at it. You had to be driven. You had to listen to customers, and you needed to run a smart business. It was not not an easy competitive environment with the type of payment that you had to deal with and the cash flow issues and what was reimbursable, what wasn't, all the compliance issues that came through. But anyway, so we did that in the early 90s and really became number one in lift chairs and scooters about 95 or so. And that's when we started developing the Jazzy because largely scooters were not the ultimate indoor maneuverability product. We needed something that was, and that's how it largely was invented. Very much, again, I just give credit to my brother Scott and certainly to our engineers. And look, I played a role too. Scott used to say, you're Mr. Outside, I'm Mr. Inside. But what I used to do is provide the information that providers / dealers, as we used to call you, like yourselves, would say, hey, you need to do this. Hey, you need to do that. Hey, we're having a problem with this sort of motor or actuator or electronics or battery charger, whatever it might be. And, my brother was just on it like there was no tomorrow. And literally, and we would get these things fixed fast. We were just about trying to be the best. We did everything we possibly could to remove any reason that any dealer / provider wouldn't buy from us. The best products, the best people, the best processes, the most reliable delivery, the best customer service, best technical service, all that stuff. And then assistance in helping you merchandise and advertise so as you could be successful with our products. But the Jazzy was really something in 1996 when it finally came out, and the ultimate maneuverability, power, mobility device. And then we just rolled from there. And then, as you know, we started really getting together when Quantum Rehab in about 2000, when it was essential that we applied seating, electronics, all the specialty things, all the nuances, head array systems, you name it, to that wonderful power base of mid-wheel drive. And it was just great. It was, look, I was there for 20 years. The industry was amazing. We had so many good friends. You and I are still friends, right? I haven't seen you in a little while, but just friendships. And, you learn so much in business, right? You become conditioned. You become conditioned to focus on results, not on administration necessarily. You learn to check your ego at the door. You learn to underpromise and overdeliver, right? You learn to not make good the enemy of perfect. All things that, frankly, I brought to my first venture into politics was I was Secretary of Revenue for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and I was in the governor's cabinet. And we just focused on applying business principles to that agency and treating all my constituents like customers. And I mean for the entire state, all taxpayers. Basically, we were the IRS. I was headed basically the IRS for the state of Pennsylvania and other things. We were in charge of the lottery and helping with budget and things of that nature. But I'll tell you what, we were driven to deliver, and I didn't want to let anybody down in the governor's office. And we were actually named the most improved Department of Revenue in that 4-year period. And I joke sometimes, I say it felt like being named valedictorian of summer school, because it wasn't that difficult to make a department, a government department, more efficient and deliver for people with lower costs, just like you do in business. And, I do my best to bring that to Congress. But as a legislator, sometimes you don't have all the decision-making ability that I had as revenue secretary, and certainly as I had as when I became president of Pride, or even just along the way. We were very much of a team. I mean, Scott was always the CEO. Scott was in charge. He was the final decision maker. But he made me president in 2001. Yeah, it was right before 9/11, actually. And I really appreciate.
In 2001, my son was 1 year old, and I want to share this little story because, first of all, thank you for saying the kind words that you said about me. It was really nice of you. But what I always loved about you was that, no matter what it was, if we had an issue, if we had a challenge about equipment, you're like, we can do this. We'll figure it out. Like, you just made everything so easy. I remember we did a commercial together, and here is a picture. This is actually a picture of my son and his grandpa that we had in a Pride, I think Jazzy. I think that was a Jazzy or Jet 2 or whatever they were back then. And we did commercials together. And I remember you always make things fun, right? We had dinners together. We worked hard, but we got a lot of things done back then, I just felt like. And I remember at one point you had the way that we kind of like, this is my fun story about Dan Meuser, is that we were at a MedTrade, which is coming up, by the way. And you put Ed McMahon, for the viewers that don't know who Ed McMahon is, Google that. But you put Ed McMahon up to screaming across the MedTrade floor, "Hey, Melissa, you might have just won $10,000 on the Publishers Clearinghouse." And so I met Ed McMahon. We went to dinner. He did a voicemail that night on my phone saying, Melissa can't get to your phone call right now, but if you'll just wait a minute, here's Melissa. And he did his, famous "Here's Johnny" voice. Right. And so anyway, I had this like little poster of Ed McMahon, and you guys used to put this out. He was a spokesperson for you. He wrote a book, "Here's Johnny," and then he signed my book, for Melissa. One day your prince will come. So he was always real sweet about that. And then lastly, we got to actually go to Beverly Hills and meet. He was like, Melissa, if you're ever in Beverly Hills, stop by. I'm thinking, well, when am I in Beverly Hills? But you know what I loved about him? And it's like you too. When you say something, you follow through. And like, I just called him up. I was in California. I said, "Hey, Ed, I'm in California. I want to come by and see you." Well, here's a picture of my son. He was probably like 5 then, and Kaylee was probably like 11 or 12. And we met Ed McMahon at his house. But I share that story because I just love that no matter what you did, if you believe it, you followed through with it. From there, we advocate, here's some pictures of my advocacy pictures, pictures getting, seat elevation paid for. Here's a couple pictures of me getting to meet Obama. Yeah. I share this story only because I pretend I was going to run for Congress. That's my Dan Meuser picture, by the way. But I don't think that I don't know. I've always said I'm not really that politically correct. So I don't know how you do it. But I really admire you. And what I also love about you is that, I haven't talked to you in a few years, but, we had a little hiccup on a Medicare issue. And I literally just text you and I'm like, "Do you even remember, this little gal from Bethalto, Illinois?" And you're like, "I'll call you in 10 minutes. And I think that's what you do for the people of your state. Like, you care about people and you care about helping people with disabilities. And that's where I feel like we really kind of bonded. And I just want to, say basically thank you for being who you are and what you're doing for people. And I wanted people to understand too, like, don't be intimidated by calling your congressman, because, really they're like anybody else, and, and they're there to help and serve, other people. And so I do want to get into, how did you go from, selling Pride, basic and complex wheelchairs to then getting into politics? So help me make the transition there for the viewers.
Yeah, thanks. And those Ed McMahon days, we had fun with those spokespersons. We had Evel Knievel. My mother was never so impressed when we told her we had Evel Knievel as an endorser and spokesperson. But Ed, what a gentleman, what a wonderful guy, right? He was just always just so fun and classy, good man. So it was really AA home care. I mean, starting to spend time with our legislative affairs, NCART, everything that we were dealing with CMS and HHS. And, we set up our compliance department at Pride Mobility. Not that we were billing directly, but our customers were Medicaid, Medicare, private insurance. So we set all that up, and then we just really became industry advocates. And, I largely led that effort from Pride standpoint, along with, working with Invacare and Sunrise and others. So we were all working together on those government affairs issues. And, I got to know Arlen Specter extremely well. As a matter of fact, he became quite a champion of our industry. Rick Santorum, both Pennsylvania U.S. senators. And I started getting drawn in. And I figured I would. Spending time in Washington, I just was impressed by the place, sort of in awe, and thought, how great it would be to do this one day. So it's kind of how it happened. And I started doing some more things locally, getting involved in more fundraisers and events for those that were running for office. And next thing you know, I ran myself, lost my first run, and came in second, or shall we say. And but
you ain't first, you're last, right? Tell me about that. How did that make you feel? Because you've never, I don't think you've ever not been first in something. So
I don't know about that, like? But yeah. Well, look, growing up playing sports and everything else, you learn sportsmanship, but it was tough. It was tough to handle that loss. But just like with anything, you learn a lot, and it is what got me into the governor's cabinet, because along the way, I got to know Tom Corbett, who was running again for Attorney General at the time while I was running. So we were doing some joint events, and we got to know each other. And then he decided to run for governor, and I helped him in his campaign. So one thing led to another within a political career, if you will. But that's kind of how did it feel? It was rough, but just like with anything, you learn from losing. There's more of a poetic way of stating that, but it's true. I mean, they say you don't learn a heck of a lot from success, but you do learn from the school of hard knocks. And business is very much like that. All business is not winning. It's never given up. And it's recognizing when you need to make changes and improve and, keep working. So that's what I did. And then other opportunities came along. I was considering running for lieutenant governor. I actually toyed with the idea after I was elected in the House, running for governor a couple of years back. And look, I don't know if this is news or not, but I am going to be giving it consideration again, the idea of running for governor this perhaps in 26, but you got to start a lot earlier than that. But truly, what I'm mainly focused on, and not just mainly, solely focused on for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months, perhaps, is getting through President Trump's agenda on strengthening our economy, strengthening our national security, strengthening our energy policy, doing the things that have been promised along the course of this campaign. And there you just showed a picture of me in the Oval. I guess that was in 2019, something like that. Yeah. And Trump always keeps people laughing.
Does he?
I don't think I've ever been in his presence where even just for 2 minutes where something he does isn't have some deliberate humor to it.
Yeah, I think I have another picture here. You shaking hands with him. It looks like you're coming off of an airplane.
Yeah, I flew with him that day. That was up to Wilkes-Barre. I've flown with him on Air Force One a few times during the campaign on his Trump plane. He's just a very, very genuine, generous guy. that, in my view, not everybody's view, but my view, is completely dedicated to doing the best job he can for all Americans. I mean, he feels responsible for those who gave him their vote, who gave them their faith, who have hope in what he can do for America, and he doesn't want to let anybody down. As a matter of fact, that's kind of our saying. He'll after we chat, he says to me, "Hey, Dan, you know what? You never let me down." And my response is, "I never plan to, Mr. President." So we got a pretty good relationship.
That's awesome. Did he come to Wilkes-Barre to visit Pride?
No, we never had him into Pride Mobility, but he has been up in the Wilkes-Barre area. We've done rallies at our arenas and some other events. But perhaps now, when he's now over this time period, maybe he will come in. You know, not to get political, but my brother Scott likes staying focused in the lane of delivering great mobility products, the best in the world, for all people. We don't want to show any preference on the political stage, but on the same note, you pay respect to whomever the member of Congress is, whomever the senator is. I mean, like Bob Casey has been in Pride Mobility many times. I'm sure now Dave McCormick is there. He'll be in. If Joe Biden wanted to visit, I'm sure he would have been welcome as the sitting president. And so my guess is if President Trump were to do that, I'm sure my brother wouldn't mind interrupting the production line to allow that to happen. Well, I'm not sure.
We've got a picture here too of you with President Trump. And is that your wife, Shelley?
It is my wife, Shelley, yes.
Okay, so I just say, first of all, now I'm working for a company called HR Healthcare, where I'm their chief contracting officer, and they provide catheters and urology products and ostomy products. And so they're a lot like your company, which I want these two brothers to get with you guys, because they started the company with their dad. It's like almost a similar story, and they're in Pennsylvania as well. They have a manufacturing plant as well as they're a provider of services. But it's the CEO is the brother that's running the company, Colby, and his other brother, Chris, and then his father, John, started it. So I think there's so many similarities that you guys all have to get together and kind of share stories. And he told me he's a big Trump supporter, and he said if you can get President Trump on this podcast, then he would be super impressed.
All right.
So I'm just throwing that out there for a little challenge.
I'll put in the word, and I'll try to get him. I sometimes get President Trump to respond. He likes being responsive. As a matter of fact, I was just with him over the weekend, and he's like I said, he's quite a guy. Just no more than 2 weeks ago, I was with a bunch of third graders at a school private school that we needed to help get some funding that they would do, and we did successfully, fortunately. And they wanted me to come in and thank us for saving their school, that sort of thing. And they asked me, these third graders asked me if I knew Donald Trump, President Trump. And I said, well, yeah, I do. And they said, you ever talk to him on the phone? I said, well, yeah, I do. And they said, call him. So here I was. I found myself caving to third grader peer. And I said, well, I can't promise he'll pick up, but I called President Trump, and he answered. And he ended up having a nice conversation with the third grader. So he's really quite a guy.
That's awesome. It shows, his character. He's, he'll take your phone call. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So yeah, here's the picture of you with him. Very awesome. And then I have another picture of you here with Elon Musk. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, as you know, Elon and President Trump have gotten kind of close. And Elon's a smart guy, and he's got a lot of creative, out-of-the-box thinking, to say the least. And he and the president came up with this Doge concept of how he could help and analyze some of the unbelievably excessive, in many cases, excessive spending that takes place from our federal government. I mean, our spending, and I almost hate to admit this, since I entered Congress, Melissa, spending has gone, or our debt has gone from $19 trillion to $36 trillion. Now, a lot of that was COVID related. It was necessary. We shut down the economy. So we shut down $4 trillion, $5 trillion in GDP. So we replaced that. But the problem is government never ratchets back. The Biden folks came in and just even spent more than that and caused inflation and ratcheted up our debt. So we got a lot of excesses. I mean, many of the departments have literally doubled in size just in the last 4 years. And that's just that's just not necessary. So Doge is going to come in. We're helping with that. I'm helping with that. I got some bills. I got a lot of ideas. We all do on how to lower. So anyway, Elon, I met him once at Mar-a-Lago. Trump invited me down. And then Dave McCormick had a suite at the Army-Navy game. Dave's Senator Dave McCormick. He's a Army veteran, went to West Point and all. And he had the president there with Elon. And Elon hung out with us for the next 2 hours, eating sandwiches and cookies and all, and watching the game. And I had my son with me, so it was my son talked to Elon more than I talked to Elon. so that was
tweeting
good.
some things during the game, or
I'm sorry?
I said, was he tweeting some different things throughout the game, or
the president?
No, Elon. Well, that's true. The president.
There was a lot of, yeah, right. There was a lot of chatter. Everybody wanted to talk to him, of course. But he's an interesting guy. He always has a follow-up to your question, and he doesn't end conversations. It's almost like you have to. And he talks. Like we had a long talk about the drones over New Jersey, which were unknown at the time. We talked about Starlink, how that could help Pennsylvania, because I got way too many rural communities that have lousy service. We talked about what else? Doge, of course, what needs to be done there. So, yeah, he's a good guy. He's very approachable.
That's awesome. Well, Congressman, I know, Dan, I know that your time is very valuable. I know you have really important things to do, and I want to be respectful of your time. But I also want to know, first of all, just, what are your plans right now legislatively? What are you working on? I want to kind of wrap up in a little bit because I know you got to go, but what are you working on today? Here's a picture of you on Fox News. I know you're very vocal. You're always out on social media, which is very cool. What are you working on right now? What's important to you?
Well, a lot, obviously. I mentioned Doge, so I really care about that. I honestly think our debt and deficit is even worse crisis. I hate to say this to the American people because it's not necessarily at the top of their list, but in a way, it's even a worse crisis than we have at the border or the world instability or inflation or anything. So we need to get our fiscal house in order. I mean, our service on our debt, for crying out loud, Melissa, this year will be over $1 trillion. $1 trillion just to pay the interest on our debt. $1 trillion of the American people's taxpayer money that's going to nothing other than paying interest. So that needs to be corrected. As well, of course, we've got taxes is going to be a big issue. We're doing this whole reconciliation. So we need to keep the Tax Cut and Jobs Act taxes in place, primarily for small business. If they have to go up slightly on wealthy, to be honest with you, that's just going to have to happen. I'm not someone about increasing taxes at all because our nation doesn't have a revenue problem. Frankly, you've heard this before. We have a significant spending problem. So, but the bonus depreciation, the R&D tax credit, the small business 199A, 20% tax reduction, carried interest. These things are just so important to keep the American economy maybe not the most competitive in the world, because we don't necessarily have to be the most competitive in the world, but we need to be the best in the world to create growth and opportunity and quality of life and all the revenues that come with that. So, but then there's the foreign affairs issues dealing with tariffs. For instance, I when President Trump's first term, I worked with Peter Navarro. I was on the tariff work group, and I hope to be on that again. I haven't been tapped for it yet, but I hope to be on that again because, believe it or not, that can be done in a way that's very much in the interest of the United States. but it can't be overdone. We got to find the so-called Goldilocks. But we also need cooperation from other nations, and somebody like Marco Rubio and Howard Lutnick and others who, by the way, I know extremely well. They're going to say, hey, we don't want to hit 20% tariffs, but you have 20% tariffs on us. Lower yours to 5%. We'll lower ours to 5%, and we'll call it a great day. That's the whole idea, reciprocity there. And national security, energy, Melissa, is just such an unbelievably important issue. I have Marcellus Shale. I got one of the largest reserves of natural gas in the world in my district, and the Biden administration largely put inhibitors on it big time. I mean, we're most companies aren't even drilling. We paused exports. We're stopping pipelines. The regulations are ridiculous. They hit them with more taxation. I mean, it's just I go on for 25 minutes as to why that's very hurtful in so many ways, from revenue to jobs to American national security to a clean energy, for crying out loud. Natural gas, a clean energy. So all of that. And then, of course, my committees, I've got financial services, and we're trying to do some things there to allow community banks and even large banks, for that matter, to have a more predictable regulatory environment that they had under the Biden administration. I have oversight on our committee of SEC. I'm a subcommittee chair on oversight and investigation. So frankly, there's a lot to do there. There's been a process in the last administration to stop banks, causing banks to debank from certain industries, like the energy industry, like the crypto industry, like firearms, for instance. Anything they didn't like, they were pushing them to debank from. So they put a lot of distortions in our economy, which has rattled things. So we want to do this work and get things right and make it favorable, so as American business can be the entrepreneurs that is really in our blood, more so than any other country. So and then the border, right? I mean, that's a huge deal. And I think the president and Congress are going to work together to handle all this in a righteous way, but also a humanitarian way. And that, we just have to do that. I'm conservative Republican, I guess. I mean, I consider myself a problem-solving conservative. But everybody has a different interpretation of what the word conservative means. To me, it's doing what works for the short term and the long term, primarily the long term. And a lot of that comes from what would be the common sense things that would be done in running a business and how good businesses run. So we got a fair amount on our plate.
Yeah, I was going to say, you have no shortage of challenges, right?
It's an interesting job. It's truly an honor to serve my constituents. And by the way, that's what comes first. Customer service always comes first. Constituent service always comes first. We are great at it. I promised my constituents 6 years ago we would have the best constituent services out of 435 members. And I actually think at this point we're there. The type of work that my district staff and my Washington staff do for our constituents. So, and there's a lot of rewards that come with that. When you find money for veterans that weren't getting it, when you find past Social Security dollars that they couldn't get through the muck of the bureaucracy, when there's IRS money being held up, when we deliver on some projects for some road developments and community projects, that's those are the singles. Those aren't the grand slams, but those are the singles that are rewarding and people appreciate.
That's awesome. Dan, what do you want to be known for?
Oh, a great dad. Hopefully my wife sees me as a great husband. But this is a business channel, so why don't we somebody who really gave a damn and gave it their all, and really tried to live up to, as you said, live up to your promises. And and help make decisions that improve things. And so you leave it better than you found it. And that's the main reason I'm interested in perhaps going into the governor's role. That, when I see Florida, when I see, heck, even Missouri, I shouldn't say even Missouri, when I see Indiana, when I see Utah and Georgia and Texas just being the place that people want to move to and have their jobs and businesses move to, I just think this is wrong. We're not doing as best we can for the people of Pennsylvania. And we could follow their models first. We could follow the models of Ron DeSantis and then go beyond that. And that to me is would be very exciting, big project to run.
Well, I love that. And I love that you're thinking about running for governor. I know that you'll have a big fan group from HR Healthcare in Pennsylvania. So good luck with that. And I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to be on my podcast today. And I want to thank you for all the support that you've given the complex wheelchair industry and just your love for people with disabilities and helping them to move forward and get the equipment that they need. And just for everything that you're doing.
That was such a rewarding industry, right? This, my God, I used to walk along our Quantum line and say, hey guys, just think who you're making this for. Every product that left Pride Mobility Products and Quantum Rehab made a profound difference in somebody's life, from the therapist providing the product to the family of the user and then to the user. And that was, really what a just great industry that we have memories of and we were part of. And, and that's what made you so good at it, Melissa. You were just so not just passionate, but understood the detail of getting the job done. Hey, I know you're the one doing the interviewing here, but what do you want to be known for?
Oh, wow. You just really turned that around on me, huh? What do I want to be known for? I want to be known for someone who stood up for people who didn't have a voice, who felt unseen, felt unheard, or maybe even felt uncared for. So I think about people with disabilities. I think about people, women in business sometimes that don't feel heard or seen, but mainly like people with disabilities that really need things to help improve their lives. And like, why as a country do we make it so hard for these people? So to me, it's really about speaking up for people who maybe not have a voice. And I'd love to be able to give them that voice and give them the platform that they deserve. So I think about health plans who are making, decisions about policy and coverage and reimbursement and how important it is that they not only look at it from, think of it as a business. I mean, too, like people have to provide this. They have jobs. They have, they can't just think about it as just, it's just reimbursement. It's more than that. It's about people's lives, that these people need equipment to get around and be mobile and independent. This, but yeah, I get fired up about it because I just think that we make it too hard for people with disabilities to get what they want.
I think we do. Even your opening, your mission commentary, and it's so true. What you do best, you have the heart for and the mind for. And for some reason or another, I do think I have the heart and mind for public service. But I got to even go back to my brother Scott. I think that's why, and the culture that was developed at Pride Mobility Quantum Rehab, they care so much about the end user, and they've got the mind to the skills to deliver for those who benefit by our products, and that just goes hand in hand with any real success in any field.
Exactly. Well, you never forget your why. When you see what these people deal with on a daily basis, I think a bad day is when I have a bad hair day, right? But, these people really have real challenges getting out of bed, being independent, mobile, having the right catheter so they don't get urinary tract infections, things like that we all just kind of take our health for granted. So, Congressman, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. And to my listeners, if you like what you hear, please leave a comment, leave some feedback. I read them all. And if you want to know more about Congressman Dan Meuser, please take a listen, send it to your friends and family, like me and subscribe on YouTube. And I appreciate this podcast so much. Thank you so much, Dan. And until next time.
Thank you, Melissa. You take care.